Okay, so the second heaven is something I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while now because it's a pretty vast topic, but there's, I think, a lot of confusion about it in several different ways that it can lead to error in rather different directions, actually. And I suppose talking about the second heaven really is to talk about all three, but I wanted to focus on the second heaven specifically. But really we have to start with just the traditional breakdown of the three heavens of the Bible. And if you Google the topic, look for videos on it, this is typically what you'll hear people explain, because this is kind of the predominant teaching based on the heliocentric model, of course, the Copernican cosmology. So you have the Earth being a globe, which has a spherical atmosphere around it, which is considered the first heaven, the sky where the birds fly, and then the second heaven, which is outer space where the planets and stars are, and the third heaven is the final heaven where God's throne is, which is obviously a spiritual domain, since God is a spirit. So obviously, once you come to understand that the original biblical cosmology is much, much different, and that they really truly believed this, and this is actually what the Bible teaches, and that the earth really is flat, that there is some kind of a firmament above, and that the sun, moon, and stars are within the firmament, etc. This model starts to break down very quickly, in the sense that there is no three-dimensional physical space outside the three-dimensional physical space of the atmosphere, right? So in that sense, in the Copernican model, the first heaven and the second heaven are really just the same. The only difference is that the air, right? Which is kind of weird because supposedly there's other planets out there and some of them have atmospheres, which would mean that they have their own little first. So there's multiple first heavens, right? I mean, according to that logic, it's kind of funny because I did come across this little diagram that somebody made because obviously they had kind of thought about that and were trying to, they were kind of trying to rationalize through the implications of that. So apparently there's lots of firmaments out there and lots of heavens, and it gets very convoluted. That's the whole point. And so essentially what you have is that, according to this sort of materialistic approach to the heavens, where you believe in outer space and you believe in the Copernican model, it gets really complicated really quick and doesn't make any sense because it's all just physical. Now, of course, most Christians who believe in this three heavens model, they do believe in a spiritual realm. They do believe in angels and powers and principalities and heavenly places and so on. So the question is like, well, what does that mean? Where are those heavenly places? And that's when you get into, oh, well, that's hyperdimensional. So in a sense, they hold to this three heavens idea, and of course the third heaven being spiritual and therefore hyperdimensional, but then the hyperdimensional spiritual realm sort of overlaps everything. And in some ways, I think this is why a lot of those folks actually reject, or reject flat Earth, is because they assume that it just reduces everything to like in some ways like the Mark Sargent idea, where everything is just like a physical like a physical Truman Show kind of world, which is absolutely not what the Bible describes. So in reality, the biblical enclosed cosmology, the flat Earth cosmology, has a physical Earth with physical pillars probably somewhere, some kind of physical firmament, it would seem, with waters above. I mean, water's physical. If the expanse of the sky, the firmament, is separating the waters from the waters, then there's, it has to be a physical barrier at some point. But this does not mean that all these things that are within the firmament, the sun, moon, and stars, are purely physical, physical aspects of creation in the same sense as, rocks and trees and mountains and everything. And this is what many people are coming to understand, is that these are hyperdimensional aspects of creation. These are actually very much interwoven with the angelic realm, and this starts to make sense when you understand how much the Bible talks about the stars and the angels and everything else. The stars and the angels practically interchangeably. So it does get confusing for those people trying to maintain this Copernican cosmology. What does outer space have to do with the spiritual realm? They don't really seem to know how to connect those two, even though they imagine that there is a connection somehow. It doesn't make sense. Now, from the enclosed cosmology, what we understand is that, yes, it's all very close and immediate, and yes, it is very hyperdimensional, interdimensional, and there is overlap, because obviously the sun, moon, and stars are things that we can see with our three-dimensional eyes, with our physical eyes, and feel the sunlight on our body. But at the same time, those things are not limited to our physical dimension. So you start to understand that, wow, the spiritual realm it really is all around us and above us, and it does become it becomes more literal and far less removed than the Copernican cosmology makes everything. It's right there. It's right above us. But at the same time, as I've been kind of this week looking into a lot of this spiritual warfare stuff, and stuff that actually goes so far as to qualify as Christian witchcraft, where they're talking about spiritual warfare, but really, so this is the other direction that we can wildly err, is thinking that the second heavens are a place that we are supposed to go ourselves and engage the enemy there, and this is not true. So on the one end of the spectrum, you have the biblical creationists who are trying to harmonize the Bible with Copernican astronomy and all the various facets of scientism, and so effectively they lean towards materialism or deism, really. It's kind of a blend where the supernatural is believed in, but it's much more hypothetical, much more removed from your day-to-day life. But because they don't understand the occult foundations of all those ideas that permeate, astrophysics and everything, you follow that to where it is nowadays, where they're talking about string theory and wormholes and the multiverse and all these things, which in a sense translate right back around to the other side of the spectrum, which is the traditional New Age and occult concepts of the second heaven, or the astral realm, or whatever you want to call it. Which, honestly, the more I look into it, I realize that this is where all these concepts of quote-unquote outer space and alien worlds and wormholes and portals and things, this is where it all came from. These were the first astronauts, quote-unquote, which literally translates to star sailors, star navigators, star travelers. The first star travelers were who? The Fallen Watchers. And then after that, people throughout the centuries who have gotten into all kinds of pagan occultism. The whole topic of star gates, right? Which is a whole thing in itself. Various temples and monuments and ideas of specific places in the world that are more conducive towards interdimensional, contact and so on. So there's a large segment of the population that is so entrenched in the Copernican, materialistic, scientistic cosmology that there's little understanding of what Satan is doing, right? Or might be doing with things like NASA, with things like CERN, and understanding how this could all be part of just one big agenda, one big project that's being constructed, right in front of our faces, and we think it's about putting little men in suits on the moon. Well, maybe they are. Maybe they are going to the moon. But if they are, it's not in the physical sense. It's not, they didn't ride a rocket ship for 3 days and go, play golf on the moon. It's, the reality of those things is interdimensional. It's within the firmament, and it's right up, and it is in the sky to a large degree. So the other way that Christians can err, that we can go to the other extreme, the other end of the spectrum, is by then embracing the reality of these spiritual realms that are, below the highest heaven, below the third heaven, below the throne of God, but that are in the spiritual realms, these heavenly places, the heavenly dimensions, where more and more teachers today are teaching that this is what spiritual warfare means, is that we go into these realms using various practices that are actually from the occult, and engaging demons and engaging fallen angels and engaging other, presumably other occultists and witches who were doing astral traveling and things like that. And this is disconcerting, to say the least. And in some ways, just the more I kind of look into this, the more I see how, the more I really do see how multifaceted the whole deception is. as the old saying goes, there's more than one way to fall off a horse, right? So on the one side, you're reducing the reality of the supernatural to almost nothing, and being naive to it, and then the other extreme is to have an unhealthy fascination with direct spiritual experience, to the point where we start imitating the occult, thinking that we're learning the secrets of spiritual warfare and so on, when in reality you're just falling for the same seductive lies that people who get sucked into the New Age and witchcraft do. And when you really look at all the propaganda, it should really make you stop and think. I mean, after realizing the truth of the flat Earth, I mean, I never looked at things like Peter Pan the same way. What do they say in the movie? Second star to the right and straight on till morning. I used to always think that was so weird when I was a kid. Who came up with this idea? I always thought it was just so kind of odd that they flew up into the sky and, went to a star and they were in this other world. And, now it's like the occult symbolism there, with the Pan character. I mean, hopefully we all know who that actually represents. And the thing is that as the flat Earth topic grows and more become aware of the supernatural realities that's such a huge part of the creation itself and the cosmology, I definitely see the potential for more and more people to get sucked into those kinds of false teachings. And so I guess that's kind of why I'm looking at why there is a connection here and why we need to be, wary of that going forward. So I'll probably be talking about this more in the future as well.